Video is to talk to you more about exposing the skeleton of a poem. So, an easy way to release or relieve frustration and stress when creating a poem is to simply use a skeleton of a poem. And this skeleton of a poem, you're basically going to add the meat, the muscles, the blood, everything else, the organs, and the spirit. So that's how you have to see it, okay? So take a poem that someone posted in the workshop. My workshop at Planting Poems Workshop. Let me give you the address: www.facebook.com/groups/Planting Poems Workshop. So basically, you take a poem, you can take one in our workshop, one that is under 40 lines, okay? You don't want to get into the long ones because then it'll start to get frustrating. Or you can take a short poem that you read that you like, and you create a skeleton. You see what the skeleton is. And what you do is you start stripping off the meat and the spirit and the blood and the organs off of that poem, and then see what you have left. And then you can copy and paste, take that skeleton and add that to a document of yours and use that to build a whole new poem, adding your own meat and your own blood and your own organs and your own spirit to the skeleton. A lot of poets do it all the time. It's a great way to build up poetry muscle memory and to memorize different skeletons of poems. After a while, you will remember these different skeletons because you've written poems from them so many times. So I'm going to use an example from a poem in the workshop. And let me see what I'm going to use. I'm going to use one that I did. Let me see. So when you do write this poem, you're going to follow this skeleton template and use that as a means of building your poem. So let me see. I really like this one posted by Jose. But I'll read this one, which is sort of a longer one. And this is one I wrote. So basically, my intro, I decided I'm going to read the poem and then I'm going to break it down so you can see the skeleton of the poem. Every naked tree I see has a dark green bag underneath it, and beneath that, fresh dirt. Another thing odd. An old woman standing on bony legs like they heavy. An old woman that seems to be sitting on fat ones in a wheelchair. A small-faced dog with goggles on. All of them speaking like their lips are frozen. It's July. Why? And everything is dominated by white. Nothing all alone owns the world now. The trees, the red and blue door that seem too bright. The white sidewalk that seemed too clean. The white cover of the lamppost swallowing the gold glow of the bulb. I stopped there. I'm not dark enough to say who the white people are, so I don't. Spare time allowed me to count the trees. I counted 4 naked trees in front of 4 nameless stores. I almost lost count, and the old people mumbling, growing as I move away. We know people who do that believe the world belongs to them. And while standing in your way, they think they are roadblocks, the exit out of the empty, one-shaded dream, the keeper of the leaves off your lonely tree. So, you see, I'm going to expose the skeleton. So the first stanza where I say, every naked tree I see has a dark green bag underneath it, and beneath that, fresh dirt. So I gave you, I'll go right into the image. The subject is primarily about these trees that I can't stop seeing, even looking at, even though they don't have any leaves on them. So right there is my introduction. And then I start to walk you through time. So I don't focus entirely the whole time on these trees because the mind tends to drift naturally. So the next part, I have an interrupted thought. I say another thing odd, as if I'm talking directly to somebody. So that's my thinking line. Another thing odd. So then I go back to another point of view. I go to a point of view. Now I'm showing you a viewpoint. An old woman standing on bony legs like they heavy. So there's this viewpoint I'm giving you. And then I go from there and I have a thinking line at the end of that. It's July. Why? So, and then I go to another viewpoint. I start to give you the middle ground. Everything that is sort of in the middle of this whole event. So I say everything is dominated by white. Nothing all alone owns the world now. The trees, the red and blue door that seem too bright. So this is that other viewpoint, which is the middle ground. Everything that I see right away. And then I say another thinking spot, another thinking line. I stop there. So I'm telling you a story. And then I say, I'm not dark enough to say who the white people are, so I don't. So that's another little thinking line. Spare time allowed me to count trees. So that's another little thinking line. Then I go back into the final viewpoint. I counted 4 naked trees in front of 4 nameless stores. I almost lost count in the old people mumbling, growing as I move away. We know people who do that believe the world belongs to them. So that's that final viewpoint, and then here's my closure. And while standing in your way, they think they are roadblocks. The exit out of the empty, one-shaded dream. The keeper of the leaves off your lonely tree. So there's that. Now, I did return back to my subject, but at the last line. So I sort of tied it in with everything else. So you have my intro, you have my thinking line, you have my first viewpoint, you have my thinking line, you have another viewpoint, you have a little small thinking line, you have another larger thinking line, then you have my next viewpoint, and then you have my closure. That's my skeleton. So skeleton of the poem. So you can do that. And you don't even have to call them viewpoints. You can call them movements if that make it better. So you can trim them down anytime you want to. Your movements don't have to be as big as mine. This is a longer narrative, so I might actually trim it down. I've been trimming it and trimming it and trimming it. So I'm going to actually get it down to as close as I can to no more than 35 lines. Right now it's about 20. It's actually about 45 lines. So I'm going to actually trim it down and take out maybe a whole little chunk. So I might take out, I counted 4 naked trees in front and 4 nameless stores. I almost lost count in the old people mumbling as I move away. So I might take that part about how many trees and stores. When you write your poem the first time, don't focus on specifically having all the right imagery. Just get everything you see down there and then go in and pick what stays and what goes. And then you can grab your skeleton out the poem and use that to write other poems with that same skeleton. So to build other poems using that same skeleton. So I hope this helps to give you some understanding of seeing that every poem does have a structure. It does have a skeleton. And you can write like any great poet. You just got to know how to get their skeleton, what makes a poem And then it's all up to you to come up with the imagery and the story. But don't forget to pick your subject ahead of time. If you don't pick your subject and you don't focus on the story of the subject, going from general to specific images, then it sort of sounds like you're just rambling nonsense, which I have done in some of my poems. So I'm becoming more focused on using a skeleton to guide me through the story of my subject. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps.